today is going to be biomolecules. So from just hearing that term, just that the two words that make it up, biomolecules. All right, what does the prefix bio mean? Life, thank you. So we're taking biology right now. We need to know that biology is the study of life, and we know what molecules are. Molecules are basically elements, atoms that come together to create new things. So these are the molecules that come together to create life. Anytime that we're studying about biomolecules, we're going to talk about 4 basic biomolecules. So those 4 that we're going to talk about today, those 4 are going to be, one is going to be carbohydrates, which you should already have a slight idea what they are. The second one, which is going to be lipids. The third one is going to be proteins. And the fourth one is going to be nucleic acids. Now, with these 4 biomolecules, these first 3 are all found in food. So they come from our diet. This one right here, this last one, this nucleic acids, you're born with it. This is what you inherit. So this is your genetic info. So like in the video that you were watching, even if you haven't seen the video, when you eat food, you do consume all 4 of these, but the only 3 that you take in and you process are those top 3, the carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. For those of you that can't see, let me go ahead and project this. So once again, hey, look at our data. So this is my 5A. I want y'all to know where y'all stand. We're going to boost that up. But as a district, we did do pretty decent. So make sure as a school, we did pretty good in the district. Our average is up there. We want to be at the top spot. We want to maintain it. So let's see. 5A. Screen. All right, so y'all should be able to see in a second. All right, there we go. So everybody should be able to see. Yeah, so those top 3, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, we get from our diet. The nucleic acids, we do not consume those. You get those day 1 when you're conceived, when the 2 reproductive cells that made you come together, your nucleic acids were given to you then. This is why a genetic researcher can look at a single cell and determine how an organism is going to look just based on the DNA. They can determine if this individual is going to be right-handed or left-handed. Are they going to have dark skin or light skin? Curly hair or straight hair? Blue eyes or brown eyes? That's all determined from your nucleic acids that you get from your parents and just being conceived. Moving on to the next part. So Unit 2 is all about biological molecules, and we just broke that down. So bio means life, molecules, these different components, atoms, elements coming together. So you have a chart like this. Let's go over this chart before we deep dive into these notes. So find your chart. So the elements, what does CHO stand for? What does that stand for? What does CHO stand for? What does it stand for? CHO, what does it stand for? Carbon, thank you. Yeah, so carbon, that's a little too wide. Let's see. Hydrogen. So let's see, carbon. So if you don't know what that, and you just wrote it down, I need you to write it out. So carbon, hydrogen, and then oxygen. Now, the function of your carbohydrates. So whenever you think about carbohydrates, I want you to think sugar. And that's just a basic definition. If you only think sugar, you're not going to get the question right on your test. But just as your basic level of understanding, whenever you hear carbohydrate, I want you to think sugar. This is why if you know anybody who's an athlete, or if you know anybody who's really obsessed with fitness, or somebody who's trying to get skinny or thin, they'll say, "Oh no, I'm not eating carbs." Like, anybody ever seen the movie? Well, y'all, I don't think y'all should see that movie. I don't think it's appropriate for your age level. But just perhaps, has anybody ever seen a movie called Step Brothers?
Yes.
You saw it? You remember the scene? The guy pulls up his shirt, he shows his six pack, and he says, "Look at this, I haven't had a carb in 3 years." And he had like his abs are all ripped. Carbs, so sugar. That can allow people to gain weight. So he was avoiding carbs because he wanted to be ripped. But the thing is, we all need carbs. No one in here can live without carbs. So you can say I'm a vegetarian, you can say I'm a carnivore, but whatever diet you follow, vegan, whatever, everyone needs carbs. So the function of carbs is going to be long-term energy. Nope. I just told y'all wrong. The function of carbs is quick energy. Please don't write long-term. Quick energy. That's your function. So everybody needs to know that for carbs. They provide quick energy. There is a second function of carbs that you also need to know. Here's your second function. This one is lesser known. So not only are they for quick energy, they're also for structure. So your carbohydrates, they're made of CHO. What does CHO stand for? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Their function is for quick energy, and they also build structure. Now let me explain to you why I say carbohydrates build structure. Your desk, what is it made out of? Wood. Where does wood come from?
Trees.
How do trees make wood? No, how do trees make wood? How do trees form wood? See? What do trees do? How do they grow? Sunlight. What is the process of trees growing from sunlight? Photosynthesis. So trees make glucose from photosynthesis. That glucose gets stored in a complex form, and that's what wood is. So wood is nothing more than a carbohydrate. Can we eat wood?
No.
Are there some animals that can?
Yes.
Yes, they can. For example, termites, they have a bacteria in their gut that allows them to get the sugars from wood. The wood is a complex sugar. Now, when we talk about carbohydrates being a sugar, not all sugars are sweet. I'll give you an example. A potato. Has anybody ever eaten a French fry before? All right, are they sweet? No, they're not, but they are 100% starch, which is a sugar. It's a complex sugar. It's not a simple sugar. So fruits, things like that are simple sugars, but you do have some complex sugars like what you find in a potato. So here are examples. We have glucose, which is just regular sugar. You have fruit. You should be writing some of these examples down. You have potatoes, which are going to be your starches. I'm just write starch. What's another example? Pasta, very good. Bread. Where does bread come from? What is wheat? What is wheat? What is wheat?
Grass.
It's the seed of a grass plant. And that seed, inside that seed is a sugar that we compress, we break it down, turn it into flour. We make it rise with yeast and we eat it. Now here's your monomer. Make sure you know that mono means one. So monosaccharide. Saccharide means sugar. Mono means one. A monomer. What did I tell you how to write for monomer? It's a building block. It's a building block. So if you think of a monomer like a Lego, a building block would be one Lego. There's another term we're going to talk about called a polymer. That's many Legos put together. It's like building a ship or a tower out of Legos. All right, lipids. Let's move on to lipids. All right, so for lipids, I want you to think fats. So lipids, make sure you have that word fats. What elements make up lipids? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. It's CHO. CHO, the same thing. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. But now you should be able to tell me that carbon is is the C, hydrogen is the H, O is the oxygen. Now that function, when we talk about the function of these lipids, you should be able to tell me that lipids are for long-term energy. Lipids also make some hormones, and we'll talk about what those are later. And lipids also make up the cell membrane. So you need to know all of these. My son made me feel pretty stupid last week. We were looking at this little thing on National Geographic, which I don't know. A lot of students think that I go home and torture my kids and make my kids read biology books. Like my students were like, "Yo, you must. If your kid gets a B in biology, he gets a whooping, huh?" Like, but it's actually true. I'm just kidding. I don't torture him and make him do this. But he loves biology. He does. He really loves animals a lot. So something came on about a camel, and he was like, "Dad, why do camels have a hump?" And I was like, "To store water." And he was like, "Wrong." I was like, "Really?" So I looked it up. Camels have a hump. It stores fat. They don't store water in their hump. How many of y'all knew that? Don't lie, for real. I believe you. Alejandro, I believe you. I didn't know that. So when I was a kid, they always told me that camels had water in their hump. They store food in their hump. They store fat. So fat is for long-term energy. If you do not know that, you're going to be in jeopardy on your test. You need to know that. I put a star by it. I'd highlight it. All right. Examples. Where do we find fats? Go in your fridge. Open your fridge. Where do you find fats? What has fats in it? Give me an example. We have oil. Okay. Oil. Usually not in the fridge, though, right? All right. What else has fats? Butter. Very good. All right. What else? What else is another source of fat? Bread? No, bread's it's carbohydrate. It's one more thing. It's in the fridge. It's just like butter, but it's not. Milk has some fats in it, not a lot. Cheese. Cheese. All right. You need to know your monomers. You have two. You have glycerol and fatty acids. Glycerol and fatty acids. All right, and we're not gonna do the sketches, but we already know. We wanted to draw some fats. We draw like a stick of butter or something like that, which I'm not that good at drawing, so I'm not gonna even try. All right, next, moving on to proteins. Now, my bodybuilders in here, my athletes, you need to know all about protein. So, who's an athlete in here? We're good. All right, very good. I got an athlete. So, what do you eat to get protein? What would you eat? Like meat and stuff. Right, right. So your proteins, you're gonna eat meat, fish. Eggs are a good source. The egg white part, not the yellow part. The yellow part is actually a fat, so it's a lipid. Eggs, nuts, and a plant source. Let's just say you're a vegan. You can also eat beans. So yeah, you can survive without eating animals, but you still got to get your protein. So you'd have to get your protein from other sources like nuts or beans. All right, the elements that make up proteins. We know it's CHO, but now we have an N. That N is for nitrogen. Very good. So in ecology, we talked about the nitrogen cycle. How does nitrogen get returned to the environment? Plants need nitrogen. I just started my winter garden, and with my winter garden, I added some nitrogen to my soil. My nitrogen was basically, well, if I tell you where I got it from, you'll know. But how do we get nitrogen back into the soil? What has to happen? Nitrogen doesn't come from water. The water cycle. Where do we find nitrogen? Have you ever went by like um, like a garden place and it smells like manure, like cow droppings, that's nitrogen. Nitrogen is what makes plant leaves green. It allows them to form their chloroplasts. So nitrogen has to be in the soil. Now we get it from eating cows. Plants get it from breaking down what cows drop. So the function of nitrogen, everything. This is the most important biomolecule. Hurry up. So nitrogen is going to be for building muscle. So I'm going to put building tissues. It builds tissue. It creates antibodies. What are antibodies for? What are antibodies for? We just got out of a pandemic and y'all can't tell me what antibodies are for. No? What are antibodies for? What body system are they a part of? Their immune system. So antibodies are what allow us to fight viruses. So that COVID vaccine, it created antibodies in your body that allowed you to destroy the virus. And they also allow for cell transport. Bless you. So proteins are extremely important. Even if you're not trying to build muscle, if you're just not trying to waste away, everybody needs proteins. So the monomers, amino acids, and I do like to draw what proteins look like at a molecular level just because it could be helpful. So if I said that was a protein, these right here, these individual building blocks would be amino acids. So these amino acids are grouped together by these chains. All right, nucleic acids. Nucleic acids. It's our last one. Nucleic acids are the easiest one to know about. Nucleic acids, the elements are going to be C, H, O, N, P. We know the N stands for nitrogen. The P is going to stand for phosphorus. The P stands for phosphorus. Sorry, that looks like phosphorus, but it's actually phosphorus. All right, the function, storing genetic information. I was gonna write info. All right, examples, easy. DNA and RNA. I went to a science teachers convention a couple years back, and I heard they put that on the board, and the teacher literally said Dana and Raina. I really hope she was joking. She was like, "Who's Dana and Raina?" But it was DNA and RNA. I hope she was trolling. All right, and DNA, I will draw that one too. DNA basically looks like that double helix that we've seen in the 7th grade, but there's a new single helix that you're going to learn about now in 9th grade. It's called RNA. So DNA is a double helix, RNA is a single helix. They're both very important. Matter of fact, that COVID vaccine, the reason it was a big deal is because this is the first time that they've treated a virus prophylactically using genetic information. So they injected RNA into people, which I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I had to get the vaccine anyway. They don't care about what I believe. For nursing school, they made me get it. I had to get like 3 of them. That goes into you. It goes into the nucleus of your cells, and it causes your body to create certain proteins. These proteins are called antibodies. They're basically an instruction manual for your cells. This is the first time that this has ever been done, and that's why the COVID vaccine was very, very controversial. And it still is. But it's also a modern marvel as far as science goes. All right, moving on. All right, so now we're back in your notebook. Yes. If and when she comes back. I'm just kidding. You know she's coming back. All right, here, your organic compounds. You need to write organic compounds contain the element carbon. So my college-bound students, you're going to get to college and you're going to have to try to take this course called OChem, or Organic Chemistry. if you want to be like a doctor. I did not take OChem. I'm glad I didn't. But organic chemistry is all about this element carbon. It's found in all living things. We're not going to write about the atoms and the electrons. We're just going to write organic compounds contain the element carbon. And they're found in all living things. All living things are going to contain that element of carbon. That's why we have cho, cho, chan, and chon. So this is in our journals. Remember, this should be in your table of contents. You should be using different colors when you're writing so it pops off the page. You should have a highlighter. Can I move on? Organic compounds contain carbon. That's it. That's all we're in for that one. All right, monomers versus polymers. So here's a new word. The new word is polymers. We just talked about monomers. Look at this picture right here. Many small molecules are monomers. One large molecule is a polymer. So what I would write, just to simplify this, I would not write everything. I would say monomers are individual building blocks. And a polymer, on the other hand, is a long chain of monomers. Poly means many. Mono, like we said earlier, just means one. So in your notes, you can write a monomer, individual building blocks. Polymer is a long chain of monomers. It's a long chain of these building blocks. I always like to talk about Legos. Legos were a big thing when I was younger. I know you guys probably didn't have Legos. I don't know what y'all had, probably Minecraft blocks or something. So individual blocks, and then I guess like a Minecraft tower, I guess. I don't really. Guys are different. All right, moving on. Can I move on? Monomer versus polymer. Like a polygon. How many sides does a polygon have? I think it's 5 or more. I could be wrong. I know they have many sides. You can have a polygon like, that's if something has like 18 sides. You call it a polygon. You're like, I'm not counting all of those. Moving on. All right, so here are the 4 basic biomolecules that we talked about earlier. Now here you're not gonna be writing a whole lot, but I am gonna make a few points. Carbohydrates. So write carbohydrates. We're gonna go over those real quick. You already know a little bit about carbohydrates, but I don't know if we discussed this. Carbohydrates are made by plants. They're the body's primary source of energy. And we know they're made of monosaccharides, so you don't have to rewrite that. So you can just write carbohydrates real quick. Made by plants. They're the body's primary source of energy. As a matter of fact, our brain is fueled by carbohydrates. If you ever seen this commercial about like Snickers, they have this like person that looks like a Sasquatch, and they're like, "You're not you when you're hungry," and then the Sasquatch eats a Snicker and it turns back into a regular person, and they're like, "Don't be hangry" or whatever. Hey, being hangry is a real thing. Some people get agitated when they have low blood sugar because they don't have time to play around because their brain is like, "Hey, I need to eat right now, right now." Like in the hospital, if somebody comes in and they just had a accident, let's say a car accident, usually a car accident is going to cause somebody to leak fluid, spinal fluid out of their ear if it's a very hard trauma. And what they tell us to do as nursing students is that you're supposed to test that fluid. You take a glucometer and you test it for glucose. If that fluid that's coming out of the ear has glucose in it, that means that it's positive for spinal fluid, meaning it means that person needs a CT scan. They need to go get their brain scanned because they're leaking brain fluid. So literally the fluid that fuels your brain has glucose in it. We need glucose. Not only does it fuel our muscles, it fuels our brain activity. Your brain can't run off glucose. I mean off of lipids. It needs glucose. I think I need some glucose right now because I'm making mistakes. All right, so it's the body's primary source of energy. Now I want y'all to look at these pictures. Over here, what is this? Brown sugar. Where does that come from? Where does brown sugar come from? I gotta get out more. They take sugar cane, they put it in a pot with some water, they beat it, they boil it, and all the sugar that's inside the sugar cane comes out and they evaporate it. And that's that raw sugar. That's that raw sugar. My guy that has to use the restroom, go ahead and go. That's that raw sugar that comes out. Now, what they do in a factory is that they refine this sugar. That means they remove all the impurities. Those impurities are polysaccharides. So your polysaccharides are going to be in the brown sugar. That means it has many different types of sugars. It's a very complex sugar. If you take a spoonful of this, your blood sugar is not going to shoot up. If you take a spoonful of this, it's like a drug. Pure white sugar that has nothing to stop your body from absorbing it. You absorb it within seconds, and your blood sugar shoots up. So this is, some scientists theorize that the reason that we're having so many problems with blood sugar nowadays is because a lot of people are eating this, and this has not been around forever. This is new. This pure white sugar is new. Like, people didn't have that 200 years ago. They had stuff like this that took a while to break down because it was a complex sugar. Now we have the simple sugar that's like 0 to 100. All right. All right. Anyways, monosaccharides. One thing I want y'all to know about these is that they end in ose. So write this somewhere in your notes. Right? They end in OSE. I'll try to write it up here. They end in OSE. I'll give you examples. Here's an example right here. Glucose, galactose, fructose. And there's another one, sucrose. Is an ose. So all these things that end in ose are normally carbohydrates. That's a trick that you can use when you're taking your test. If it ends in ose, chances are it's a carbohydrate. They end in ose. So if you ever heard somebody say they were lactose intolerant, that means that their body cannot break down the sugar that's found in milk, the lactose. So what happens is their bowels evacuate themselves because they can't tolerate that. Matter of fact, this past Saturday, we had to give that to a patient in the hospital. The patient had liver failure, which means ammonia builds up in your body. And the only way to get that ammonia out is to give them something called lactulose. You give them that, they drink it, and their bowels evacuate. It's not pretty. I think I'm still traumatized. All right, moving on. I got that? All right, so polysaccharides, you don't have to write this. I just want you to know that polysaccharides are complex sugars. So like I said, your desk is made out of wood, but I don't see any of my students, any of my sane students trying to eat their desk. Like, this is made, you cannot digest that wood, but like a termite could. Now, go ahead and add this. Write that a starch is a polysaccharide. Right, starches are examples of polysaccharides, or you can just write starches under carbohydrates. I need you to know that starches are complex sugars. And then I have some students who would ask me, well, you don't have to write this, but I'm just going to tell you. How come lions don't have to eat fruit if all animals need sugar? Well, that's because we store sugars in our muscles. So when we eat sugars, our liver converts those sugars into glycogen. We store that glycogen in our muscle tissue. And so when carnivores eat muscle tissue, their bodies are really good at taking glycogen and using it for their primary source of carbohydrates. That's just in case you were wondering, do all animals need this? All right, we're going to rush through lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. I already talked about them. Here are your examples of carbohydrates. Pasta, bread, fruit, carrots, oatmeal, anything that usually comes from the plant, beans, carbohydrates are in them. All right, lipids. You don't have to write anything from this, except lipids are for long-term energy, and they're found in the cell membrane. So that's it. Lipids, long-term, and they're found within the cell membrane. And I already gave y'all the example, so you can just write fats, waxes, steroids. So lipids are for long-term energy. Think about that camel hump. The hump is actually filled with lipids, and that's for long-term energy. That's it. That's all we need for lipids. Lipids are for long-term energy. Yeah. Lipids, long-term energy. All right, there are your examples. Make sure y'all know about the glycerols and the fatty acids that are. Did I talk about the monomers? Let me see. I know y'all wrote these down earlier, but let me just make sure y'all have it. All right, well, it doesn't say it, but what you need to know about the lipids is the two monomers, which I did talk about earlier. The two monomers are going to be the glycerol and the fatty acids. Those are going to be important. I think on the quiz that you're going to take, you're going to see a term called triglyceride. That's a polymer associated with these lipids. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So here, look, here it is right here. Our monomers for lipids, glycerol and fatty acids. Those are our monomers. These are our building blocks of lipids. Monomers. Those are your building blocks. You take lipids, you take glycerol and fatty acids, you put them together, and you have a lipid. Okay. All right, proteins. So here we go. So proteins, they do a couple things in the body. They're very important. They fight diseases. They transport substances. Just write proteins are needed for life activities. And then write those two things that they do. They fight disease and they transport substances. I promise y'all we are almost done. Because most of the information that you have that you're going to use on the quiz that you're about to do is right here. So if your chart is filled out, good. You do need to know that proteins are made of amino acids. They fight disease, they transport substances, they also build tissue. So if you're trying to get swole, my bodybuilders in here, my athletes, make sure you take your protein after every harsh workout. Proteins are found in muscles, hair, cartilage, and in your nails. These are all sources of protein. And then right proteins create enzymes. So that's another example of a protein, enzymes. I think I was watching a movie, not a movie, it was like a news clip about the guy that played Thor in one of those in the Marvel movies, and they were just saying how the team that was like feeding him had a hard time getting him enough protein to support his muscles. Like so for those big, extremely huge bodybuilders, if they slack on their protein, they're gonna lose muscle. They're gonna be very upset. So they gotta make sure they're eating the right amount of protein. And once again, what do you eat for protein? Meat, yeah, meat. What if you're a vegan? What can you eat?
Plants.
Beans, yeah, not just any plants, not fruit. You have to eat beans and yeah, nuts. All right, moving on. We know proteins are made of amino acids, and there are sources right there. Like I said, if you look, you saw the beans, the chicken, cheese is a rich source of protein, nuts, and fish. And for our last topic, our last point, we have nucleic acids. These are going to be extremely important. And you're going to end your notes by drawing this thing right here. But before you draw that, I want you to write that nucleic acids store genetic information. They carry instructions for building proteins. And those are your examples. And then this is your monomer right here. This is going to be extremely important. I want you to draw this monomer of a nucleic acid. I'll make it easy for you. I'll redraw it and tell you what everything means. So right there you have a phosphate. Right here you have a pentose sugar. Mine is almost a pentose sugar. Let me try to redraw that. There we go. You have a sugar. And then over here you have a nitrogen base. I know you have no idea what this is. Just draw it because you need to know it. And we're going to talk through it as we learn. Not today, but another day. But you do need to know that this is a nucleotide. This is a nitrogen base. This whole thing right here is called a nucleotide. It's a nucleotide. Now this is that one biomolecule I told you don't get from food. You get one set of nucleic acids unless you get the COVID vaccine like I had to do for school. But the nucleic acids, that's what you get from day one. Like I told you guys. How old are y'all? Like 13, 12? Oh, 14. So 14 years and 9 months ago, you all look like this. You were one single cell inside your mother's uterus. So when you see your mom, go tell her thank you. But inside of that single cell, you had this. This is a nucleus. Inside that nucleus, you had nucleic acids. Those nucleic acids give you all your genes you have today. So everything about you was predetermined when you were one cell big. That's like if you have a pen or a pencil, the tip of your pen is how big you were 14 years, 9 months ago. So tell your parents thank you for getting you this far. All right, so that's pretty much it. So your chart should be filled out. You have your notes. Your notes should be colorful. They should pop off the page. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.